На наших очах твориться історія. Класно, якщо вона буде знята.
Hi, my name is Catherine Litvinchova, and this is UA, the day that we survived. The war Russia has started against Ukraine is still ongoing, and still we are sharing the stories of people who show fantastic resilience towards the circumstances. Today we introduce you to the Ukrainian documentary and its creators. You can support our work as an independent media and a podcast platform by becoming our patron via the link in the description. So, let's meet Kostyantyn Kliatskin, Ukrainian film director, a member of the Association of Cinematographers Babylon 13 and the founder of the DocNoteFilms studio. Kostyantyn has been making documentaries in Ukraine since the days of the Maidan. Back then, on November 30, 2013, fighters of the Berkut Special Unit carried out a forceful dispersal of protesters on Maidan Nezalezhnosti Square in Kyiv. The demonstrators opposed the Yanukovych regime for suspending preparations for the association agreement with the European Union. That day, most people gathered in the square were unarmed students. As a result of the violent dispersal, at least 79 people were injured. This event became a turning point not only for the Ukrainian protests of 2013, but for Kostyantyn personally. At that time, he studied at the Karpenko-Karry National University of Theatre, Film and Television.
Коли побили студентів на Майдані Незалежності.
The incident with the students being beaten in Maidan Nezalezhnosti Square really impacted me. It forced me to do something. I was a student then too, and it was crucial for me to react somehow. Our history has been rapidly developing since then, as has the history of the Russian invasion, which began in 2014. Anyway, me and a group of filmmakers called Babylon 13, all this time we have happened to be at a certain edge of the events.
One of Kostyantyn's most well-known films reflecting the Russian invasion since 2014 is Crimea, As It Was. It tells the story of the officers, soldiers and sailors who did not betray their oath to Ukraine and removed military equipment from the occupied Crimea without leaving it to the enemy. Although Kostyantyn has been filming the war for 8 years already, the Russian invasion in February caught him by surprise.
Мене особисто як людину, як батька там.
As a human being and father of a small child, the invasion caught me by surprise. On the first day, I had to look for ways to secure my family. But simultaneously, as a cinematographer and an artist, I started working on the second day of the invasion.
On February 25th, 2022, the first video about the Russian invasion appeared on the Babylon 13 YouTube channel. It was a 3-minute video called Ukraine Remains Strong, edited from fragments of eyewitnesses' videos collected from various Telegram channels. It shows how the enemy is advancing through Ukraine and how the Ukrainian troops and people resist. Kostyantyn's colleagues from the DocNoteFilms ended up in different parts of Ukraine, so larger-scale projects took some time to launch.
Фільмування відбувалось досить так спорадично, бо
An opportunity arose and we went to Kyiv. Another opportunity arose. We drove to Drohobych, Lviv and Khmelnytsky. We went to the places where it was most comfortable to shoot, because shooting in general at the beginning of the invasion was difficult. Any person with a camera was automatically considered either a saboteur or an untrustworthy person. And this caused significant problems at any checkpoint. If soldiers found a camera, they started a full search, looked through the phone, whatever. And that was understandable, but it was also challenging. And when we all finally united with my team, when we gathered again in Kyiv, we began to think more specifically. Since then, we have filmed a lot. We were in Mykolaiv, and we studied the history of Sumy and the Sumy region very well. We were in Chernihiv. We filmed a lot in the suburbs of Kyiv, Bucha, Irpin, Gostomel, Warsaw. The events at the front affect you a lot, and you always want to get closer there. Well, there is a different understanding of the war in general, and of yourself in the war there. And this, of course, always splits me internally so much, and I want to be everywhere at once.
The war often throws up heartbreaking plots, but Kostyantyn believes it is extremely important to record them.
We've met a guy who has been under occupation in Bucha for a month. There was a ruthless occupation there, so much violence and shootings. I have never seen such a concentration of hatred as in Bucha. And here was an ordinary guy who survived several clearings, as the Russians call them. When the Russians left, the first thing he did was to walk very carefully around his house and then along a few streets. Back then it wasn't clear what was going on. The Russians had a practice of leaving snipers on the roofs. They could just shoot people, like on Yablonska Street, the one now known as the Street of the Dead. Most of the people there were shot dead by a sniper sitting in an attic. I saw that attic, and that man. The first thing he did, he walked and started filming on his phone. Just everything he saw. There were so-called evacuation convoys on the streets of Bucha. Just cars with people who wanted to evacuate but were shot dead. Locals sometimes buried them nearby at night, so that they would not lie in the vehicles and would not rot. And that guy we met, he filmed it all day. Day by day, he went further, visiting some friends and filming everything, watching the same things. I asked him why did he film all that, and he said, if I don't film it now, they'll say it never happened. And that's the kind of thing that guides me when I make documentaries.
Kostyantyn explains why the work of documentarians during the war is crucial, and why speed matters here.
Things get smoother over time. A month ago, something very vividly evoked some complex emotions. Then after a month, a person can already tell the same story in just 2 words. If you film here and now, if you film people while they still have a fresh emotional memory, not a factual one, then you can build stories that will actually have value over time. Because facts are very easily tampered with. People forget something. What is the difference between emotional memory? It may be a little less accurate in terms of facts, but it conveys the state of a person very accurately. Moreover, suppose a person has experienced such terrible things, such as have been happening in Ukraine. In that case, his emotional memory will be the best indicator of what has happened. In addition, if you shoot not one person but several, through this kaleidoscope of emotions, you can understand something in between and actually draw conclusions that will be much more honest.
Kostyantyn and his team shoot a lot, but not all the tapes can be edited quickly. Sometimes it is because of time, inner strength, and the lack of funds, of course. The war in Ukraine is now not only content but also the context in which the film industry is developing. The state supported companies and individual artists for a long time, and much was tied to that funding and opportunities. The cultural sphere budget was significantly cut off with the introduction of martial law. Still, artists have another problem: the mistrust of specific institutions.
Finding an opportunity to make good cultural projects and films in Ukraine before the invasion was possible, even with the support of the state. We had a Ukrainian cultural fund. Someone had Der Kino, However, I had no cooperation with Kino after it became clear that it was turned into a manual structure, which is not guided by the principle of the concept and the quality of this concept, but simply by some negotiation tricks. It became unacceptable for me. Anyway, there is the thing that pleased me the most in the Ukrainian cultural segment in recent years. It is the public broadcaster. They announced art contests where they engaged third-party companies to produce content for broadcast on the public broadcaster airwaves. There are 25 regional channels with comprehensive coverage. As for the state, now it has wholly abandoned culture. This can be understood on the one hand, especially in the first months when the Ukrainian Cultural Fund said, let's give all the money to the army, to the Ukrainian armed forces. Excellent, everybody understands why it's needed. But not providing any support for artists now is simply an abandonment of culture during the war. And it's bizarre. One of the reasons why Ukraine is fighting is for its culture. Maybe because I'm used to volunteering, relatively speaking, shooting not for money but for the idea. Perhaps that's why it's easier on me. But now I see this problem globally in the movie field. Trying to commercialize the sector is incorrect. It is valuable and it is cool. Nevertheless, in the conditions of war and the absence of state support, it is necessary to adapt and change. If one is ready to change, he or she will find an opportunity to create, even in these conditions.
Kostyantyn and his team managed to find such an opportunity. A dozen shorts they filmed during the full-scale invasion are now available online. Some movies have even been presented in Kyiv cinema. For example, Holidays in the Occupation tells the stories of non-workers from the Kyiv region educational institutions that suffered the most due to hostilities.
Holidays in the Occupation.
Holidays in the Occupation. Why this movie is important. We took one specific aspect of the territories that have been under very active hostilities, partly occupied, partly not occupied, and we tried to tell the story of the educators. Because from what we saw, unfortunately, the Russians purposefully destroyed educational institutions, especially if they looked good. For example, the Lyceum in Gostomel, where they have lived for some time and kept many hostages in the basement. The Lyceum was destroyed and looted, and all the doors were broken. It used to be a modern Lyceum. There were a lot of electronics, 3 robotics classes, interactive whiteboards, projectors, and even computers in each classroom. Such a spaceship, to say, even in my understanding. Absolutely everything was destroyed. And what the Russians could not take with them, they simply shot so that nobody else could have it. And there are so many of these stories. Therefore, we made a small kaleidoscope of the state of education in the Kyiv region after the occupation. And this resulted in a full-length documentary, which was accepted into the main competition of the Kyiv Meet Docs Film Festival. We had excellent partners on this project, such as the Swiss-Ukrainian educational project Decide UA. They helped us conduct these expeditions, as fuel and equipment entailed a lot of expenses. And such a film was born. It will premiere at the film festival. After that, we want to make a release in cinemas and then go online immediately, on video platforms or YouTube. It is essential that this film has its own straightforward connection with the viewer, right now.
Creating in a war-going country is a challenge. Consider yourself. Reflecting on events while simultaneously hiding from explosions in a shelter, or working on footage in between blackouts. Not easy, but interesting, Kostyantyn shares. Now his team is working on the Art in the Land of War project, which is designed to explore the artist's place in a warring country.
Це будуть
25 films will be about various artists, painters, sculptors, conceptualists, composers, and other people from different fields. We will explore the nature of creativity in general and the nature of creativity during the war. Because the war very much destroys the usual framework in which the artist needs to remain in order to, for example, be able to go beyond it when he creates his work. When this framework is not there, when the war physically destroys everything that was before, it seems to me that this provides a very interesting field for creativity. However, does the artist now have the strength and the opportunity to create? We will investigate this exciting question. This is a big project. My studio, DocNoteFilms, in partnership with Babylon 13, is producing it. The show will be released November to February and appear immediately online. We really hope that television will also be interested in it.
We should say that there is plenty of outstanding projects in the history of Ukrainian documentary. Winter on Fire by Yevgeny Afanaevsky was nominated for an Oscar and Emmy. The rights to show the tape were bought by Netflix in 2014. Director Irina Tsilik won the award for Best Director of the Sundance Festival for the film The Earth is Blue Like an Orange. The movie This Rain Will Never End by Alina Horlova won the debut competition of the largest IDFA documentary film festival in the Netherlands. Kostyantyn tells why it is worth getting to know Ukrainian cinema and how to do it from abroad.
There is an opportunity to see and understand a lot through shorts. Moreover, Babylon 13 tries translating and subtitling its films through volunteer forces. This is very important. It works. The Ukrainian community does the same. Before they were engaged in expanding the understanding of Ukrainianness within our country, but at the same time, they always had a good volunteer base, including of translators. So they released videos in different languages. Now I am delighted to observe that they do not rest but travel to all regions and shoot short stories, especially in deoccupied cities, subtitling them in English. This is not a pure documentary for me. Nevertheless, it's really cool as a phenomenon, and it's really cool that they're doing it. And you have to watch it, because they really like talking to people. They come into somebody's house and have a nice chat. Usually, in such informal conversations, there is some understanding of what this or that place, city, or the whole category of people is like. Many of my colleagues made their films before the invasion and now have some kind of distribution abroad. Foreign film festivals pay attention to content from Ukraine now because it's trendy, roughly speaking. And many are trying to understand who these Ukrainians are, why we help them, and why they are not Russia. Within this context, all films that appear at international festivals in one way or another, and within this context, all the films that appear at international festivals in one way or another work for the same idea. It doesn't matter if it's a movie or a documentary. The important thing is that this is a voice, and this voice is heard abroad, where there is a certain misunderstanding of what kind of voice it is.
But Ukrainian content is not limited to national challenges. In fact, there are topics in which we understand each other more than it seems at first glance.
We were very surprised to see that Ukrainian veterans, those who went through the war, are absolutely in line with the general global context of any soldier who returns from war. There is such a project as Hard Batch. This is a documentary series about veterans and veteran businesses. We have already shot 3 seasons. They cover many veterans from Ukraine who have opened their own businesses or are trying to do something after returning from the war. The first season was dedicated to Kyiv veterans. The second one covered all of Ukraine. Our geography was vast, from Kyiv to the Odessa region and Kolomaya. And the third season, which we filmed last year, was dedicated to our veterans talking to veterans from abroad. We had veterans from the USA, Great Britain, Italy and Australia as participants in that season. And here is an interesting thing. In Ukraine, when 2 veterans meet, they always have something to talk about. It doesn't matter where they are from. It doesn't matter who they are. Whether it is a person from the village, it doesn't matter where they are from. It doesn't matter who they are. Whether it is a person from the village or from Kyiv, They will always be able to talk about something because there is such a thing as martial brotherhood and shared experience. I've known this since we were shooting on the front lines. It felt powerful in the trenches, where life was black and white, where there was an enemy and a side, and you knew where your positions were and where the enemy positions lay. You knew from where death, a projectile, a bullet, or whatever could reach you. And there was no place of segregation on your side. Everybody spoke of you. Neither age nor status mattered. If you were in the same trench together, you were definitely on the same side. End of discussion. Surprisingly, foreign veterans and our veterans share the same thing. Moreover, they even understand the same jokes. For example, our host in the 3rd season was a Marine, a young guy. When there was an episode with a landscape designer from New York, they talked about how artillerists who wanted to meet girls wrote in dating site applications that they were landscape designers. And the dude instantly picked it up and said, "Damn, are you a Marine?" He said, "Yes." "Well, of course, we have Marines too, like landscape designers. That is understandable." Well, that is the same kind of very local thing. Still, it was cool when people from entirely different worlds suddenly found common ground. The only barrier between them was language.
Unfortunately, this season of Hard Batch did not make it to the screens. The release was planned for the end of February 2022. But the team hopes to release the show anytime soon, because many topics that worried Ukrainian and foreign veterans a year ago remain relevant today. Kostyantyn and his team still have many filmed materials and ideas worth our attention. Additional resources will help creators to quickly edit and release the footage and also enable their subsequent filming expeditions.
For example, we have a story about Marines who held the Loitis bridgehead on the Kyiv Sea in March. This was just a brain drain because Marines heavily bombarded the Russian landing force in the Kyiv Sea. In fact, it is an important story we shot in the summer but couldn't edit yet. We have several stories like that, which we really want to produce so that they do not disappear, but we need more resources to do so. In the same way, to reach our heroes, who we have been shooting since March, for example, to go to Mykolaiv or Zaporizhzhia, we need money. Okay, we'll find a vehicle to get there, but even filling up the car is a serious cost.
To support the team, follow a PayPal link in the description of this episode. There was UA, The Day That We Survived podcast, and me, Catherine Litvinchova. Please stay safe and enjoy the Ukrainian documentaries. This episode was supported by Urban Space 100.